So I'm going to hand it over to Sam. She's going to introduce our panelists and kick off the discussion. So listen away and prepare to be inspired. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So we have three wonderful women here today. They're going to start by telling you a little bit about themselves, short biographies, and we will start with Sabra Diridon.
Hi, thanks everybody for being here tonight. My name is Sabra Diridon. I started fundraising just about right out of college. I sort of fell into it. It wasn't necessarily the career path I had chosen, but during college I had gotten interested in politics, and I worked in an internship with the San Francisco Board of Supervisors office, and I enjoyed that very much. When I graduated from college, it was during the first big Valley bust, and jobs were tough to come by, so I actually took a stipended internship for $500 a month, graduated from UC Berkeley. My parents were just about mortified. But it turned out to be what set me on the career path that I'm on now. I worked for a consulting firm, and the firm did most of the political work and mail, kind of all behind-the-scenes work on a campaign. Through that, I met who would be my first client. Actually turned out to be my husband in later years, but that's an interesting story. But and so I started working on campaigns, and I started fundraising, and I realized I liked it, and I think I was pretty good at it. So from there, I met other clients that I began to work for. I focused most of my work on legislative races, so folks that a lot of you probably know, but folks that were running for either the state assembly or state senate. I did work on Hilary Clinton's presidential campaign for a year and a half, and after that, I started my own consulting firm and just worked for multiple clients at once. And then when my husband and I decided to have a family, I kind of took myself out of politics, and I'm now working at San Jose State fundraising for the library. There's more normal hours, so. But I miss the excitement of politics, but I do love what I do now. And fundraising in any capacity is similar, whether you're doing it for a nonprofit or clients or.
Thank you, Sabra.
Thank you.
Round of applause for Sabra. Next is Wendy Ho. She will be telling us about herself.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and obviously I pulled out my best t-shirt for you all. I must apologize. I came straight from the May Day rally in March, and I had anticipated being able to change and freshen up, but unfortunately was not able to. So I hope that you will be okay with that. Usually I try to look the part a little bit, but tonight I'm a little less formal than I like to be. So a little bit about myself. I was born and raised right here in San Jose. I grew up predominantly in southeast San Jose, and actually grew up with the Brucey twins. We went to elementary school and junior high and high school, but we didn't really get to know each other until later in life, but that's another story in itself. And so for me, growing up, I never really appreciated growing up in San Jose or being a product of the Bay Area. It wasn't until that I'd gone off to college and then had spent some time working abroad that I was like, oh, you know what? California, the Bay Area is not such a difficult place to be. It's actually a terrific place. And so after spending some time abroad and teaching English in Japan, I decided that I liked being a student more than I liked teaching. I still enjoy teaching, but I enjoy learning too. So I said to myself, I'm going to change things up. I know I want to go back to California someday. And if I'm going to go to graduate school, I'm going to go somewhere where I can live for 2 years and experience something different. And something different is exactly right. I completed my graduate work at Indiana University, Bloomington, which is 1 hour south of Indianapolis, and it was there that I kind of had my political consciousness awakening. It was the first time that I felt like I was somehow different. Here in the Bay Area, we are very blessed to live in such a diverse community that's very accepting, but there I just felt like a fish out of water. My cohort of 120 students they grew up hating themselves. They just wanted to fit in and assimilate, and having grown up here, I couldn't even fathom that. And so while I was on this path in graduate school to do international development work, and I had these grandiose dreams of going to work for the State Department as a Foreign Service officer, I immediately shifted gears and I said, you know what, if people who look like me are not being treated right or given the same respect, I need to do something about that, and I need to use the skill sets I'm gaining in graduate school. And so that led me to a one-year fellowship in Congress. I worked for the amazing local Congressman Mike Honda, and had an amazing time just learning about how the policymaking process works, how we engage with constituents in the different groups that are involved in the policymaking process. And that's where I decided to commit my life to public service, because I didn't want another undergraduate student I had mentored to feel ridiculed or less respected. And that's ultimately what has driven me to pursue public office, because really there are not enough people who are in the community, representing the community that deserve that looks like them. And it's really important to me to try to be part of that process, to make sure that folks, the next generation, has someone to look up to, because growing up, as diverse of the places as was, I didn't get to see a lot of it. And so I want to do my part to pave the way for them. So.
Next we have Michelle.
Hi, thank you all for being here and allowing me to be here. I'm very excited. I was very nervous and honored just to be invited, so thank you. My name is Michelle Pelayo-Osorio, and I am currently the Chief of Staff to Supervisor Dave Cortese. And my path started, I'm born and raised in San Jose, in the east side, and with 3 sisters. And all girls in the family, so we were taught to do it all. To this day, we have arguments with me and my husband because I like to do my own oil change and my own tire rotation, and I grew up to do all of that. And my dad taught me a lot of mechanics, so every time the car would stall, my mom calls me instead of my husband. So it's still a little bit of a debate of who carries the pants in the house. So, but I do it all. I love to do it all, and that's the way we were raised. There was no such thing as this is a man's job and this is a woman's role. We cut the grass, you threw out the garbage, and you learned how to cook. You had to do it all. So that's the way we grew up. My parents divorced at a young age, and that tore me apart, and it did make it very difficult on where my education and my career path was going. But my mom was a very strong person that led me on the education path that I needed and the career that I needed. And she raised me to always be a public servant. We always look for opportunities to volunteer at church, to give back to the community. We had an old van that we would take literally all the neighborhood kids, and we would go to the park, and my mom would sit us all down and make us do our homework first, and then we play volleyball at this park. And it just became like part of the culture of you always have to look for opportunity to help others and to be able to share where people are struggling and to be that advocate. Our apartment complex was going through raises, and with her little bit of English and my ability of being very outspoken, we were able to rally people to make sure that people were heard and that the people that were going to be affected weren't going to get affected. So it started at a young age to speak out and not let people push me around, and speak for the people that couldn't, people that didn't understand what was happening and how it was going to affect them. So it was a good opportunity and a good learning experience for me. I graduated from the National Hispanic University, and then I pursued my master's in public administration and just graduated last year. So that was a recent career path that I decided to take, and I started that and thought that I wasn't going to finish it, but with all the work and everything that was going on. My politics piece of it started in the high school, of course, and college with LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, one of the largest Latino organizations. And I was challenged, since the foundation of that organization is in Texas, to run for the National VP for Young Adults. And that position has never been carried we call the night of election campaigning. So we have about 30 to 40 states that are active, and they all have their northern, eastern, western caucuses. And within one night, from 10 at night to 1 in the morning, you have to visit them all and throw your pitch, and then you have all these questions. So they're running from a gala with dress and heels, like, hey, I'm Michelle Pelayo, please vote for me, kind of thing, telling them what I can do and why I thought it was the right candidate. And of course, the popular Texan running against me was another girl, and I think we were both very young at the age, at the time, and very, not knowing what's going. And at that point, she said she thought she had it under the bag. Never has anybody in this position has been anybody from Texas. But I went in with some experience from our local elected officials here. So I went and I spoke to all my people that I knew, council members, mayors, assembly members, anybody I knew that carried a position. I said, what is the rule that I should, one rule that you can give me, what is some advice you can give me? And all of them maybe, of course, a little bit different. But the one I can't stop remembering was the networking part. You shake their hand 3 times and they will remember you. And you shake their hand 3 times and they will remember. So that was my goal for the rest of the week, was I need to talk to these people at least 3 times so they know who I am. And when that election came, I had 85% of the vote. And half of it was from Texas, knowing that we might not win. And I carried that position for 4 years. And every year I had a horse run to see it on repeat. So it was a great accomplishment. I was able to make some changes. Doing that, I was part of the health reform. I was making sure that we got included. And so we had hearings all across the states, and was able to get young adults to testify on how this affects them, from having to choose to go to college and to having health insurance, from dropping a semester because they got really sick and they couldn't afford it, because they had to pay their cold medicine or something as simple as that. And so it was really nice that they extended the age of when you can have health insurance, and a lot of changes happened with that. And it was a really good accomplishment. And when I came back from that experience, I decided that I needed to do a little bit more. And by that time, Supervisor Cortese, council member, had an opening, and they were looking for somebody that was East Side, spoke Spanish, and was an advocate or some kind of organizational skills. And I took a shot and said, can I apply for this position? And he gave me the opportunity, and I've been with him since 2005. And now I'm his chief. So a little bit about me.
So my first individual question is for Wendy.
Yes.
During your time in grad school, you obviously noticed that the API community here versus there was treated differently and acted differently because of that. What would you say is the biggest change that needs to happen here in order to make underrepresented communities flourish?
That's a great question. And, I guess I'm a little bit biased because I am on a community college board. And so that's the lens by which I look at a lot of things, right? And for me, education has always been the backbone to success. That was a value that was instilled in me by my maternal grandmother. And as we look at kind of the demographics of our community, we see that there is a lot of disparities in terms of education, income, just access to services. And I think what really needs to change is that we need to close the gap in a lot of these areas, and in particular in the area of education. It's startling to me that 40% of third graders in this county cannot read proficiently by the end of third grade. And that's a really key indicator, because if you can't read proficiently by the time you reach the end of third grade, you are 4 times as likely to not make it through high school. That's compounded by if you are growing up in poverty and can't read proficiently by the time you're in third grade, you're 13 times as likely not to be able to graduate from high school. And that's startling. And in this community where education rules and we've got all these high-skilled tech jobs that constantly need to be filled, we have this amazing workforce here, but
tell women running for office are the keys and tools for fundraising?
So I was thinking about this question, and I didn't know exactly in which direction I would take it, so I'm going to take it in kind of two different directions at the same time. One is kind of a more theoretical thought that I had, but I think it's very important, especially for female candidates, but it does apply for anybody running for office. And then the second is kind of the more practical part. So the first part is, I think perception about fundraising is what stalls most people, and it's what makes most people reticent. If you view fundraising as transactional, as leading to quid pro quo, as buying or selling, you're going to have a very difficult time with fundraising for political office. I like to talk to my clients about the view that it's not transactional, it's about an investment. It's about an investment in, I believe in Wendy, I believe in her ideals, I believe in her ideas, I believe in what she wants to do with our community. It's an investment for me to believe in her. And that means perhaps $100 or $500, whatever that means. I almost like to think of it as, we live and we work in the Valley. We are very familiar with culture of startups and investment. In some ways, candidates are startups, right? In a very short amount of time, you are building a coalition, you are creating a plan, you are setting forth ideas and goals. So I think if people would change the way that they think about fundraising and think about it as, you are investing in these ideas that are important for our community, I think you could get over the hurdle that it's not so scary to fundraise. You're talking to your friends and family, and frankly, if you actually sit down and think about, if one of my friends decided to do this, and they asked me for help, wouldn't you be proud to support them? And generally they are. There are times later on in a campaign when it will become more tough to fundraise, but those initial donors, I think you'd be quite surprised at your level of success if you just get comfortable with it. And that is hard for male and female candidates, but I do think that female candidates have a more difficult time kind of making that bridge to believing that it's an investment. And then the more practical items are things like you need to have your team together early. I'm not talking about paid people. I'm talking about people who are going to keep you on track. The people who are going to, if you call them at midnight with a problem, they're going to answer the phone. People who can help you network, people who can help you fundraise, your friends, the people who will make sure that you're on track. Most folks, when they're running for office, they're going to start out at school board level, maybe college level. You're not talking about campaigns that can afford paid staff. So you're going to need, who are your people? Who are your go-to people? You need to find those people, and you need them to commit to helping you. You need a plan. In terms of fundraising, you need to figure out who you're going to ask that early money for. Generally, it's friends and family, but you need to write out a plan. You need to have it organized. You need to start getting your lists together. You need to have phone numbers and emails and multiple ways to contact people. With any sort of fundraising plan, you're going to want to layer, right? Email may work for one, text may work for another, snail mail may work. I think you have to think about all of those different things. And then the last part, I would say, and it seems like an easy one, but sometimes this is the toughest part, but make it easy for people to do what you want, right, for what you're asking. With fundraising, what I was just talking about, kind of layering your ask. For some people, email is the easiest, right? Send me an email, I'll do it online. Other people are not comfortable with that. If they're not comfortable with it, you better put something in the mail that day. And then you follow up with a phone call. Whatever they're comfortable with is what you need to do. If you need to have minutes in your back pocket, if somebody says, I need to talk about fundraising, don't talk to them, don't tell them that. Ask them right then. Just make it easy. And then follow up. And that's also where your team comes in. You're going to need people to help
question is, it's hard to see women in this position, and I didn't realize that until I was in that position. You know, when I saw Rabia there, to me it was normal. You know, I thought there was more women out there. And, you know, I found one or two other that were chief of staff, or at least senior staff people, and you would say that's great. But when I got appointed last year, and, you know, I carried the position as senior policy, senior chief of staff in the office for about 3 years at the county, I didn't realize how we haven't changed that as women, how we haven't made it to that level. I mean, still, you look at our office right now in the board, they're all men except me. And I'm the youngest, so sometimes even that, and even youngest in the office too, so that was even hard because I didn't think they were going to look at me as, can she actually manage the office? But if I have my boss that, you know, encouraged it and says, I can't see anybody else doing this and guiding my office and guiding me, then I look back and say, I can do this. I got to believe a little bit more in myself and stop questioning the fact that I can manage this piece of it. But I think we still have a long way to go as women. I see that when it gets to moving up, sometimes men hold that a little bit more in that position. And I don't know if it's the aspect that sometimes, like Rabia had to step down, she had twins, and she's doing great. And the family piece of it affects us. And how do you come back to a position that's so demanding? It's a 24-hour, constantly watching, make sure your boss is not getting his head chopped off by work, or that someone's not calling because there's fire to turn off. And how do you, where do we draw the line, and where do we balance everything from home to a dependable, this demanding job? But I think I saw the opportunity when, you know, to grow into this position, and I'm enjoying every moment of it, and I'm hoping I'm doing a good job of keeping and representing the supervisor, and see where it takes me. So, yeah. Thank you.
The next question is for all of you, as a fundraiser, a school board member, and the chief of staff. What would be your advice to young women and girls that are interested in the political field? And
relationships and have people continue to guide you in the right path of where you see yourself in. So that would be my advice.
Thank you. So I've noticed a common theme here, obviously, passion and expertise. My next question is, since you all are probably experts or have passion of some sort, what are the biggest challenges facing women in the communities you are most familiar with?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my point. What are the biggest challenges facing the communities you are most familiar with for women and girls?
So something that I think I'm noticing right now, especially because some of my sisters do have a child right now, so I'm constantly checking my phone to see if I get a call, is affordable child care for a lot of women and also high quality education. I'm constantly hearing from parents saying, well, I'm having to pull my kid out here trying to find the right charter school that fits their needs. Or I'm pulling them out of this charter school now because they've had the turnaround rate from the teachers it's ridiculous, and it's like the charter schools are trying to make it. They have admission, but the teachers are not staying. They were great for the first 2 years, which is great because they're passionate and wanting to develop that, but now they're transitioning out. And so now you're having kids that are struggling a little bit more in public school, charter school. That's what I'm seeing in our community. And I think for our women, we still see a lot of the domestic violence issues that we're constantly hearing about. We have legislation right now that's trying to move forward on pieces like that we're constantly trying to educate our families and communities that there's South out there. So those are the pieces that I continue to hear that I'd like to see how we can continue to help and make some change on those issues.
It's a huge and very broad question. So thank you for that. I think on any kind of indicator you look at, women still lag behind men. And as much as I am very supportive of our male brothers, there is still huge disparities in terms of wages, in terms of leadership positions, in terms of just access to services. And I think particularly in the areas of community I work in with underserved groups, I think there's just an overall lack of an understanding of kind of how institutions work and how they can access services. They're not, a lot of folks that I interact with come from, countries where the government is corrupt and they don't see the government as an entity that can actually help and support you. And so there's a lot of distrust. And so helping them understand that, here in the United States, we've got these institutions, we have this social safety net that is there to support you, but they don't know how to access those services. They're afraid to access those services because they may be undocumented or there's a language barrier. And, they will just continue to live in those shadows until, someone who looks like them and can speak their language will reach out to them and say, hey, there are programs and services that can help you. But, and I see that more and more with, immigrant communities that are whose households are headed by women. It's that, they're too busy. These women, God bless them, they are, juggling these, 3 or 4 jobs, trying to support their families, and they want to be able to provide more, but, because of their situations, because of these barriers that they face, because of the lack of understanding of how our systems work, they are still kind of just perpetuating that same cycle, unfortunately. And it breaks my heart. And, as a place that was once dubbed the feminist capital of the world,
is more frivolous, but it undermines the important message that these women are talking about. But this constant talking about hair, pantsuits. It's a suit. I don't know why we have to keep calling it pantsuits. But anyway, this kind of constant discussion about what women are wearing, how they said things, if they said something that people didn't like, it's shrill, the way voices are described. I get very frustrated with that in politics, and that is something that I think we need to be better about pushing back on, because I think that does intimidate people, because not only do we have to feel maybe a little intimidated by not knowing as much as what we think others do about issues, but then we're also being criticized for how we look or speak or something like this. So that's a point of frustration. It seems like a little thing, but it undermines this whole talk. You guys heard about this whole thing with Kamala Harris and the president. And it's not that what he said was bad. It's a nice compliment. But in that arena, it should not have been brought up. She is a very attractive woman. Fine. If you're in a social setting, you can say that. But she is in front of peers and other folks that she works with, and the president is a superior to her. It just shouldn't have been said. It should have. He was very complimentary about all of her work as state attorney general, but the only thing we heard about is the fact that she said she's like the cutest. And I think it undermines her, and we should do more to push back on that sort of thing. And I don't think he did it intentionally, right? He was, and that's the thing. I think he thought he was being cute. But as a woman in that role, you can feel like, wow, what about all the good things I did? It just got wiped under the rug. Now this is what we were thinking about. Just random thoughts.
So this is the last pre-sent question, and I actually want to go to Michelle's point really quick about saying that domestic violence legislation and advocacy is still on the table right now, and I want to piggyback off of that and say, what piece of federal legislation affecting women would you like to see passed in the next 10 to 20 years?
Well, I had to do a lot of homework on that one. I literally, I started looking up everything from what we have on the table now to immigration reform to domestic violence, and I just started going on a tangent in terms of there has to be something that's really affecting us. And then I started asking all of our women groups. We have an Office of Women Policy in the county, so I'm like, hey, what else do you guys know that I should actually put a whole list? So I literally printed a whole chart of all this legislation locally, and it's like, how deep should I go into here? But I think the ones that are on the table now, I would like to see move forward, because they're affecting, I've been hearing a lot of discussion on immigration reform, and that's being swayed a little bit more men's view than women's view. How is it really affecting women and families? And I think that's one piece that I constantly hear and want to see pass, and see how I know that's going to affect, it's going to help a lot of our women and children now, and our young girls that are trying to get into schools. And of course the Domestic Violence Act, and just trying to see that move forward. There's a lot of support around that, and making that change that affects our
questions from the audience. If anybody has any, you're raising your hand first.
I wanted to thank the panel for coming out and just some great insights here. My question would be, I get to the whole panel, then I have a side note for you, Michelle, that's specific. What, in your opinion, can, I guess, the men in this room do to be more effective in making sure we get more women involved in politics? And Michelle, this is specific to you, given this my background as a Latino male, I know our culture has had a sense of machismo in it. And I guess specifically to you, do you see anything that the young Latinos can do to maybe break that cultural mold and maybe help expedite the number of young Latinas involved in politics?
To that question,